This is the Ramana Maharshi Upadesa Saram Satsang, a time to listen, reflect, and to deeply inquire into the self. Know yourself and be always free and at peace. Welcome. I'm Richard Clarke, hosting this satsang. I'm a seeker like you, sharing what we love. I've been blessed with years of deep teaching and practice that I bring to this satsang. This week I will continue with Ramana Maharshi text Upadesa Saram, the essence of instruction, and I'll cover verses 23 through 25, in which Ramana deals with the experience of realization. And we start with verse 23. For knowing that which is, there is no other knower, hence being is awareness, and we all are awareness. And this is a key inquiry. Who knows? Is it the mind? Does the mind know? Who knows the mind? When you watch the mind, you can see it moving from thought to thought, from idea to idea. Since you can see this, you know that there is someone or something other than the mind that knows the mind. If you pursue this inquiry, first you find something that just knows the mind and everything else. This is consciousness with an object. This is sometimes called the witness consciousness. As you look at this consciousness, you can see that at the same time it is being too. There is no being without consciousness, no consciousness without being. Can you find one without the other? Being and consciousness are the same thing, like two faces of the same reality, not two different things. You can find this for yourself and experience it directly. I suggest you inquire into this until it is your experience. As you keep going deeper, you find a place that is just awareness without an object. What limits does this awareness have? Does it have a boundary, an edge? Is there anything else other than this awareness? Is this awareness any other than who you are? This awareness without an object is who you are. Sometimes it's called the substratum of your being. Verse 24. In the nature of their being, creature and creator are in substance one. They differ only in adjuncts and awareness. We hear that thou art that. This tells us that of our identity and the absolute reality, and that they are one and the same. But they don't seem that way to us. Why is this? To understand this seeming difference, a key idea is about adjuncts. Upadis in Sanskrit. Upadi is a transferred property, sometimes called conditioning, like the crystal with a blue color when placed on a blue cloth. So differences are not in being, which is absolute and the same, but are rather colored by different conditions. The apparent differences we see are just these upadis. Upadis are superimposed, and these adjuncts, which are a form of wrong knowledge or ignorance, give rise to the seeming differences between the absolute and the individual. These are an imagination which exists only in the outlook of the individual, the jiva, and not in the absolute Brahman. Verse 24, seeing oneself free from all attributes is to see the Lord, for he shines ever as the pure self. What are you, free of all upadis? This is the same question as the inquiry, who am I? Who are you without any of the condition and colorings, without all the ideas of identity that color your experience of yourself in the world? Who are you without anything added? The ancient answer is Tattvam Asi, thou art that. This is something for you to experience directly, not just know about with your mind. How does this come? By inquiry, discarding everything that comes and goes, until what remains is only what is always there. Experience this. This is who you are. It appears when the ignorance is removed. Now we will have some videos, and we will start with Swami Adyasakti, and he talks about these same verses.
Namaste. Welcome to part 7 of Upadesa Undiyar, the perfection of instruction. Now this is the last part, the last section, verses 23 to 30, where Ramana reveals the ultimate sadhana. So far we started with the typical religious austerities that are performed for material gain, and then rejected that. And then we went into higher and higher levels of realization. And now we're reaching the ultimate stage of self-inquiry, vichara. And this is the sadhana taught by Ramana to all his intimate students and even to the public. So this is for everyone. It doesn't require any special qualification. Yet, it's the most powerful sadhana because it leads to permanent and complete self-realization. So let's jump right into the verses. Because of the non-existence of another consciousness to know that which exists, the reality or sat, is consciousness, chit. that consciousness itself is I, the real self. So in other words, there is one consciousness. This is more or less accepted by every school of philosophy. There is one God, one substrate of reality, one Brahman, whatever you want to call it, the Tao or whatever. And this consciousness is everywhere, in everything, and everyone. So what we call individual beings are simply a tiny reflection of that original complete consciousness in the mind and body of a human being or other being. So what's happening when we do Atma Vichar, when we inquire into our real nature, is that this consciousness is turning back on itself. We did a whole series on the secret of the golden flower, which is a Buddhist and Taoist version of a similar technique. But this is the original. This is really the best and the highest version. Believe me, I've been searching my whole life, and this is the best one. So, what is happening? You cannot see yourself directly. Just like your eyeball can't see itself. Okay? Yes, if you look in a mirror, you can see it. So, what happens when we inquire into the self is not that we see ourselves directly, but that simply the illusion stops. The covering over the real self is taken away. And we experience being who we are, instead of being a body, being a mind, being this, being that. We experience pure being, real knowing of who we are as pure consciousness. Now, consciousness has some very interesting attributes, because what consciousness is basically emptiness. It's basically a space where things show up. So consciousness, being an emptiness, has no boundaries. It has no qualities. It's like a mirror. It's pure. And it can't be, you can't tell it apart from another consciousness, another emptiness, because any emptiness is the same as any other emptiness. So there's really only one emptiness. And that emptiness is big enough for the whole world, the whole manifestation, to get lost in a tiny corner of it and disappear. And that's what happens when one becomes aware of the real self. Not that one sees oneself like in a mirror, but one becomes oneself. And the whole world, the whole manifestation gets lost somehow or other. Where did I put that world anyway? You're no longer aware of the world as world, but you're aware of the world simply as an adjunct, an upadi, or a covering on the real self. And that he goes into that later. So let's look at the next verse. God and souls are only one substance, vastu, which is existence, or sat, existing in its real nature. Their adjunct knowledge or adjunct consciousness alone is different. So the existence consciousness of both God and the individual souls is the same. Like I said, consciousness is consciousness. Emptiness is emptiness. You can't make any distinction between one emptiness and another. They're all the same. So the only difference between God and the individuals is that one is covered by the upadis and the other is not. That's really the only difference. And when you remove the upadis, then there is no difference. Consciousness is consciousness. Being is being. So this is absolute being, which does not require anything for its subsistence. It is not a relative being. It doesn't depend on anything else. It has no cause. It is not the effect of anything. And its existence is absolute. In other words, it is not the effect of another cause, but it is the cause of everything else. And it is also the abode of everything. So this consciousness, this being as self, is being God. It is allowing the small individual self to simply disappear into the ocean of God. There's a wonderful shloka that, what is the use of small bodies of water when you have the ocean? In other words, you might have a puddle or a bucket or even a lake or a river, but that's nothing compared to the ocean. The ocean is full of water. So the same way, the original consciousness, the pure self, is an unlimited ocean of consciousness and being. So when we have that, well, what do we need with this small individual consciousness, huh? These little buckets and puddles of water, these little drops of consciousness, when we have the whole ocean? That consciousness is unlimited. It has no beginning or end. So he says here, the upadis of the individual soul are, I am small, I possess little knowledge, I have no power, I'm not realized. These are all upadis. These are all simply coverings on the original consciousness. It's just like if you have, let's say, a huge vista, like a great landscape, a view of the whole world from a high place. And then you have a little dentist's mirror, a little tiny mirror. And you're trying to look at this great view reflected in this little bitty mirror. But what are you going to see? Of course, you're only going to see one little tiny part of it at a time. So the conclusions that you'll reach are, oh, well, this place is really small. Maybe it only has a couple of trees. But if you put down the mirror and you look at it directly, you see, oh, this is a vast space. This is practically unlimited. So this is the experience when you remove these upadis, these wrong views. And in the next episode, I'm going to go into the different types of wrong views that have to be removed. We're going to go into that in detail. So I'm going to move along here. Knowing oneself, having given up one's own adjuncts, upadis, is directly knowing God, because he shines as oneself, as one's own reality. I am. And indeed, this is the technique that you remember, I am. That's all. No breathing, no special sitting posture, no special anything. It's just a practice of remembering I am. And not the small I, not the limited individual I, but the original self, I, the consciousness. I'll never forget when I discovered this. I was sitting on a park bench in Mexico City, of all places, in 2005. And I was just kind of marveling, at consciousness. It's like this consciousness is the most wonderful thing. But what if consciousness contemplates its own nature? And so I kind of turned around the mirror and I was looking at myself. And it was just the most amazing feeling that this is bliss. This is the right thing. This is it. This is like the way it should be. that rightness, that feeling of, yeah, I'm home. That comfort. How can I explain it? That everything is just as it should be. That was a wonderful feeling, and I had never really experienced it before, even though I had been investigating spiritual things for many years. So I didn't know what I was doing. I was just playing around, experimenting. But actually I had discovered this method of meditation. And now Ramana confirms it. So there's no need for all this elaborate posturing and difficult exercises and gymnastics and breathing or elaborate philosophies or difficult reasoning or philosophy or theology or anything. There's no need for knowledge whatsoever. The only knowledge you need is when you start getting too involved in the world, just remember, I am. I am I. Immediately the mind stops. The world is seen as a reflection of self. And that's the way it should be. That's the way it really is. We create this world by our consciousness. Or if you want to use the word Brahman, that's fine. Brahman, consciousness, is in everything and is everything, because ultimately the world exists only in consciousness. There's no other place for it to be. Space, time, energy, matter, life, knowledge, existence, all of these are within the context of consciousness. Without consciousness, they wouldn't exist. So therefore, consciousness is the ultimate context, the ultimate meaning of everything. And to realize that is surprisingly easy. All you have to do is remember, I am. I. I am looking at I. Whatever you perceive, whatever you experience is only I. It's only self. Reflected in the limited upadis, the conditioned vasanas, and other elements of the mind, the individual. So, this is the true nature of God. There's another verse in Ulladu Narpadu where Bhagavan says, he who sees the real self, the source of the individual self, alone is he who has seen God. Because the real self, which shines forth after the base individual self has perished, is not other than Brahman, or God. So this happened to me the other night.
Now, I don't know what happened, but now we will go to Nome, who talks
Knowledge
about the
of the
knower.
existence of the knower is true knowledge. For all that you have ever experienced, there is a knower. All of the known is for and within the knower. Knowledge of the knower, therefore, is knowledge of all this. One's own existence is all this. The appearance or disappearance, the manifestation and the unmanifested, life and death, all are one's own existence. The Maharshi's instruction is the revelation of this existence as it is. He says, once the self is known, what else is there to know or to be known? If all this is for the knower, what is the nature of the knower? When the misidentification with the body, or as an embodied ego entity, is abandoned, then no longer can we speak of all this. If you have form, there will be another form, such as the illusion of duality. Are you a form? Inquiring, who am I? Dive deep into the nature of your own existence, the innate consciousness. What form does it have? If it is not the body, the attributes of the body, from birth to death and everything in between, do not apply to it. If you are not the body, what then are you? Birthless, deathless, actionless, qualityless. What are you? You are all this, but you do not become all this. You ever remain as you are. All this is only you. But none of this is a definition for you. What is this you? If you are an individual, an ego, there will be other thoughts about other things. Who are you? What is it that composes the individual? And what is it that is your actual existence? If inquiring, who am I? The false assumption of existing as an individual entity, an I notion, is abandoned. Then you know yourself with an eternal knowledge of the timeless existence, just as you are. Timeless, you are unborn and imperishable. For the unborn, there has been no creation. For that which is eyeless, there is no this. What is being indicated is not a change of state, but rather existence, the self, just as it always is. However, by conclusively realizing this, the very seed of delusion is dissolved, and with it, the possibility of bondage and its consequent suffering. What remains? The perfect. Know yourself with the non-objective knowledge that is inherent in the self. Inquire, who am I? And the solitary existence knows itself.
All right. Now let us spend a few minutes and inquire. Sit and breathe in and out and notice your breath. Take a few deep breaths and notice that you exist. You exist and you know that you exist. And now investigate within yourself. You know you exist. Who is this knower? And what obscures, what's in the way of your view of this knower directly? Is it identity with the body and senses that obscures the knower? But you know the body and the senses. Is it identity with the life force flowing within you? This doesn't obscure the knower. You know the flowing life force within you. Is it identity with thought or the mind that obscures the knower? But you know the thoughts, you know the mind, so that's not really in the way either. Who is this knower? And who am I? What is the nature of my reality? All right. Now let's close with a chant. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Peace, peace, peace. Any questions, comments?
No, it was a blessing as usual. Yeah.
Yes. And I still, as we listen and I hear Nome talk again, it still touches me so deeply.
Oh, yeah. You know, I make a point to watch a video every day and and to listen to a talk at least once.
Very
And
good.
it's just food for the heart, I guess you could say.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. So much gratitude.
Anyway, very good. Very good. And this series will continue next week. I guess, Evelyn, you'll be in Mexico City. And so we will see you probably in person before the next satsang. So we look forward to that.
Maybe.
Yes, very good.
If not,
And
you'll see me in Mexico City.
yes,
Thank you
all
so
right.
much.
Namaste.
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 And
Bye,
safe
Carol.
travel.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It'll be fun.
Okay.